Forthcoming transparent statement by Diddy's attorney here. Let's bring into the conversation someone who helped us make sense of this story when it was breaking way back when, in late March of this year. That's legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff. She joins me. Meghann, good to see you here. Boy, what a development. I don't know if you can say this is tying a bow on this story. Maybe it's just beginning right now, Meghann. But I wanted to ask you first. Let's just go to the nuts and bolts of this. Is Diddy spending the night in jail in Manhattan?
Yes, he is. He won't have a chance to get out until he appears before a magistrate judge, which should be tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon in Manhattan. He should appear before a magistrate judge who's got the first appearance calendar and is hearing other first appearances for recently arrested defendants. But he could be further detained then, or his attorneys could request a bail hearing too, which is likely. But it is possible that he gets some kind of release conditions tomorrow. But if he was arrested tonight, he's definitely not going to get out until he appears before a judge tomorrow.
And presumably we can expect a mugshot, I would imagine. You know, Meghann, you heard
possibly, although because it's a federal custody thing, they typically, at least in my experience, federal authorities don't release mugshots. But given the high-profile nature of this, I think it's likely that one could get leaked if it doesn't get released publicly.
So Diddy's team knew this was coming. I mean, that was said as much in the statement here. What did you make of that? His lawyer said he's been fully cooperative with this investigation since the raids took place in late March at his homes there in the Holmby Hills section of Beverly Hills and in Miami. So they were prepared for this, so much so they relocated there to New York just last week. Does that tell you that he is being cooperative?
Yeah, I was surprised that they'd volunteered, that he saw this coming. He knew he was going to be charged with crimes. But the cooperative nature of it, I don't think he was in the position to perhaps benefit much from his cooperation, because I think the cooperation usually benefits people who have somebody higher than them that they can point to, and that the federal authorities would like to prosecute too. And I think in Diddy's situation, they saw him as the big fish. So some people have kind of observe that cooperating with federal authorities who are seeking to charge you with a crime typically does not result in you not getting charged with a crime. But, you know, like his lawyer said, we should wait and see what the facts are. But I think we're going to see a lot more tomorrow morning when they actually unseal the indictment. And the way the grand jury indictment process works, at least in my experience covering federal courts and kind of the way I was brought up by other journalists and other editors who've covered federal courts, that the grand jury system is a pretty tight charging system. And once that's in place in the grand jury proceedings that have gone on, now that there's an indictment, it can be hard to just get that dismissed or just beat those charges.
Yeah, let's just talk about the jurisdiction briefly, because you intimated this in March in our conversations here on the air, and you found it interesting, so to speak, that this was all emanating at the time, and we were reading the tea leaves from the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. I want to correct the record here because I said earlier that the judges in New York signed off on the warrants in California and Florida. Local judges did that in California and Florida here. What did we know then that gave you the information that this was coming from New York, and why this jurisdiction? What happened here, allegedly, in New York?
I remember there had been reports that it was the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, or the Homeland Security Division, was taking the lead on that, and that they had sought the search warrants in California and Miami, which would have gone to federal judges in both Miami and Los Angeles to actually authorize that, because they're the ones who oversee those jurisdictions. But it was always said to be a Southern District of New York case, and that is where, of course, the bulk of his lawsuits are. The Cassie lawsuit, before that got settled so quick, that was in the Southern District of New York. And then remember, when this first broke, the news about Cassie's lawsuit really exploded onto the scene. There was a leak within New York Police Department that there was some kind of criminal investigation. So and they, of course, publicly refuted that and said there isn't. But the rumors and then the news about any kind of criminal investigation has always been centered in New York. While I think the investigation has obviously extended to Los Angeles and beyond.
But Meghann, do we know what the charges are going to be? I mean, we knew at the time that this was related to a federal sex trafficking investigation. Any idea what these charges could be?
We aren't going to know until the indictment actually is unsealed, but I would imagine we could see some charges in reflecting the activity that they're investigating. And this is, of course, a court that has or a prosecutor's office that has experience with sex trafficking cases. And remember, Sean Combs even went so far as to hire an attorney who has specific experience with sex trafficking cases in the Southern District of New York. He hired an experienced attorney who one of her many cases is the Ghislaine Maxwell case, who was, of course, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator
Right.
in that.
So, Meghann, I wanted to ask too, I guess what came first? These numerous lawsuits from various women against Diddy, and then did those precipitate this federal investigation, or are they linked? Should we look at them distinct and separately, or in a vacuum, or are they one and the same, do you think? Or is it too early to tell?
I think from all the reporting that we've seen, we can definitely say that they're linked, because we've heard that there's definitely an overlap between the civil allegations. The women who have made allegations against him in lawsuits have also been interviewed by, have testified before the grand jury and been interviewed by investigators. So there's definitely some overlap. I don't think they're one and the same, but also a lot remains to be seen about how much overlap is there between the allegations in the civil cases, which are, very voluminous, and what is he actually going to be charged with, and what actually made the indictment. I think there's a lot that remains to be seen there.
Okay, so you just saw some video of Diddy in a cap and gown there, which I thought was telling because Howard University cut ties with him. And
Yes.
our viewers will remember that really, really disturbing surveillance video from that hotel in Los Angeles in the hallway near the elevator where he was physically abusive to his girlfriend at the time, Cassie. That was a really difficult video to watch. It was quite triggering here. But since then, the onslaught against Diddy when it comes to just his reputation, the public relations campaign against him, the volume of accusers, how do you come back from that in this business, in the music industry, entertainment industry writ large? Or has he kissed that all goodbye after this today, do you think?
I think it's, excuse me, it's safe to objectively say he has kissed that all goodbye at this point. I mean, the civil cases, I think it was very difficult for him to come back from. But until there was a grand jury indictment, it was a question of, not everyone who gets their house raided in a criminal investigation by federal authorities does end up getting indicted. I think it was always likely that this would result in indictment, but until he was indicted, we just didn't know. Now that the indictment is in place, it's extremely difficult to get that dismissed. There would have to be some kind of major legal flaw, some kind of withholding of evidence that is discovered later on, something drastic like that, or he would have to take this before a jury and get an acquittal, which I think if you look at the history of these cases, that is very difficult to do on its face. But I would kind of predict that his team is going to go for the latter. I think they're going to try for the first and end up having to hope for the latter.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we'll see. It's a long process, so this could be, maybe a couple of years.
Yeah, it is a long process. But I mean, Meghann, you remember how graphic the details that were spelled out in Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy.
Yeah.
That doesn't bode well for what could be in this indictment when it's unsealed tomorrow, does it?
No, it doesn't. And you just think about, if we have that peek at the evidence, what else is the evidence? And like I just said, when his biggest option is, well, can you take this before a jury and get an acquittal? If you just look at the nature of the charges and then just look at the minimal evidence that the public has seen, it just looks like it's in a tough situation for him. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more. And he's really in for the fight of his life right now.
All right, Meghann Cuniff, we're going to leave it at that. Thanks so much for hopping on tonight during this breaking story. And I think we're going to be talking about this a lot in the next couple of days, Meghann.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. In the meantime here, hope you found that informative. Wanted to make sure we got that in. That's a huge story that was breaking at this time just tonight here. But let's take a quick commercial break. We'll see you in 2 minutes.